Success always leaves clues. There's a lot we can learn from the best golfers in the world. And today I'm really excited for this episode of Wicked Smart Golf Podcast because Mark Immelman is our guest. He is the author of the new book, Lessons from the Best. Not to mention, I'm sure you know him from his amazing broadcasting career and his super successful podcast, On the Mark, which is a PGA Tour sponsored show with more than 700 guests, 7 million plus downloads, and listened to in more than 100 countries around the world. After interviewing some of the biggest names in the game, Mark condensed that into this book where he's going to share some of the lessons from individuals like Dr. Bob Rotella, Nick Price, Jordan Spieth, Max Homa, and more. So in our episode, we're going to go through 5 of the best chapters that I know will help you play wicked smart golf. If you're someone that is ready to shoot lower scores, play more consistently, and just get inspired to do your best on the golf course, this is the episode for you. All right, Mark, thanks so much for being a guest on Wicked Smart Golf. Super excited to talk with you today.
Michael, it's my pleasure. We were talking off the air about the influence you're having in my household with some of your candid, thoughtful, smart, simple to apply advice. And so, look, when you came on my show, it was very well received. So I'm hoping somehow this one is going to reciprocate somehow.
Well, thank you again for having me on the show. It really catapulted the brand and got a lot of new people to find out about the book and the podcast. So thank you again. And, you have 700 plus episodes over there. So you are, Mr. Consistent, and we appreciate what you're doing for the game.
I don't know if it's consistent. It's just over a lot of time. I mean, I was looking, we actually now 9th season. And
is that what it is?
Yeah, it's crazy to believe because my podcast began on a whim with the PGA Tour. My show used to be live streaming, and it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 11 till 1 p.m. So not the best time in the world. And the numbers, I think, were okay. And I was like a PGA Tour magazine show. Monday was a recap. Tuesday was Teaching Tuesday. And Wednesday was like a setup for the event upcoming. And at the end of the year, the boss calls me up and goes, well, I mean, you're doing okay, but we're going to turn this into a podcast. And this is 9 years ago.
Yeah, podcasting was kind of new then.
Yeah, but I'm like, what's a podcast? And he goes, it's just on demand, which means more people will get to listen. Because, from 1 to 3, if they aren't sitting by their computer or streaming, and streaming wasn't even a thing back then that much either. So I'm like, cool. So we did the first podcast, or the first few, and I remember the first month I got 10 downloads. Right. And then it became a thing where I was sort of a little bit aggravated and then a little bit sort of challenged. It sort of ignited the competitor within me. And I think the next month got to like 30, so one a day. And then I remember having a goal of getting like 100, and we got to 100. Then I used to take screenshots of the download app, and then the goal was 1,000 in a month, and then it was 5,000, then it was 10,000. The next thing, I stopped taking pictures when it was like 500,000 downloads. And you know what I know for sure through this all is that golf is great, and everybody wants to play better golf. I don't care if Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods and Scotty Scheffler and Ben Hogan are playing golf together. People are looking in that broadcast for something that's going to help them to somehow shoot lower on the weekend.
It's just, you can't conquer it. It is just truly unconquerable. And I'm at 300 plus episodes. And I love that you shared that too, because I didn't even look at my downloads the first year. I just said, I'm going to do it for a full year. And I know no one's going to listen because I had a different podcast before this in entrepreneurship. And, I knew what it was like, but I was like, I love golf. I could talk about golf forever. I'm not going to look. And I just swear, I looked once or twice on accident because it was like on the homepage, but then I'd X out real quick. And I was like, just stay consistent. And here we are. So I think that's a good theme in golf and life, though. It's just, you got to stay consistent with it.
Well, speaking of the podcast, yesterday, you would think after 9 seasons I wouldn't talk in days and times because this isn't time specific, or it shouldn't be constrained by time. But I was interviewing Adam Scott for my show. And, Scotty's been around golf forever, turned pro in 2000, and he's seen the comings and the goings, and the guy's on the doorstep of the Hall of Fame, basically. And so the conversation was going to some of his successes, and we were revisiting what he was doing, and then some of the failures. And he was going, it sounds kind of cliched, and I'm paraphrasing, of course. He goes, golf is sort of like life, and they're going to be ups and they're going to be downs. And And the measure of it all is, do you just keep coming back? And I was like, so is it as simple as like falling down 7 times, getting up 8? And he kind of laughed. He goes, yeah. He goes, over my career, I've had to get up a lot of times. And I remember him saying something to that effect. And I interrupted and stopped him. And I was like, I want you to say that again, because for all the golfers watching and listening to this, they're like, Adam Scott. I mean, this guy looks like it's heavenly when he swings a golf club. And it looks like he could never miss a shot. And yeah, you're saying, there's been times when I was on the course where I was in the lead. The next thing I was struggling to hit the ball square in the club face. So he goes, I'm on the bottom of the leaderboard Friday afternoon, struggling to make a cut, and I'm hating golf. And I'm like, are you serious? Adam Scott, of all people? And to your thing, I mean, that's what golf is. You just got to keep coming back and keep a good attitude and stay consistent. Because I feel like, and I'm getting way ahead of you, I'm sorry. I feel like so many people oftentimes just right there. But with the advent of information and podcasts and the internet and the YouTube and whatever else, that they're like, this is not working. And then they try something else. And instead of staying true to who they are and to what they got to do and just sort of doing the right thing was, for an extended period of time, we're all chopping and changing. So in the end, we're just spinning our wheels, and that's keeping shows like yours and mine in business, to be honest.
I don't feel like we should have any issue with viewership. It seems like everyone's struggling more than ever despite the information. So we're hopefully trying to simplify it a little bit. I definitely think that more isn't always better, like we talked about when I was on your show too. It's such a hard game because, like you said, even Tiger, even Rory, like they're still trying to learn, which is just you never can master it. And I think that's why it is a beautiful but sometimes frustrating game. And I mean, I just got to give.
I know you're the host. I'm acting like a host now.
Oh, you're good.
I'm like, did you see the other day? Now, we should be talking about the mental/emotional/spiritual game here on Wicked Smart Golf. But you mentioned Rory McIlroy, and here's a guy on the driving range prior to a big event with 2 different training aids he's working with.
That training aid company was pretty excited about it. I saw that video everywhere.
I texted the guy because I work alongside the company, and I was like, "Did you see this?" And he goes, "What?" I'm like, "Rory using the connector." And I sent him a screenshot. It's like, oh my God, are you serious? And just that's what it is. I mean, inquiring minds, we want to get better. Rory's looking for a feel, finds this thing, uses it, and yeah, we are. I mean, we all
I could never use a training aid before a tournament like that. He's especially, someone like him, it looks like obviously a picturesque swing, but I mean, he was pretty close. He was right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I got to give you props before getting into your book, which I'm a huge fan of, and we'll definitely link to everything in the show notes. But doing my research on you, Mark, I mean, you have done a lot in the golf world. So props to you. I want to make sure everyone realizes all you've accomplished here. 3-time All-American, professional golfer, sports agent, broadcaster, podcast host with 700 plus episodes, 7 million downloads worldwide, very accomplished college coach, swing coach to professional golfers, and now an author. Well done. Well done.
You know what I think about when you say all of that stuff? My youngest daughter, Sophia, is a Swiftie. She is so into Taylor Swift. And so over the summer year in 2024, we just called the Scottish Open and we had a family vacation. I had the Open Championship week off. And so my very smart wife figured out the Taylor Swift tickets in Germany were significantly cheaper than here in the States. So we jumped on a plane, went to Düsseldorf, went to the Eras concert. Now, that's the long preamble to say, I'm sounding like Taylor Swift. I've been in every era from agent to teacher to player to coach.
I mean, what a cool progression though. I mean, I got to step my goals up. I'm only writer, podcast host right now. Mental golf coach is coming in, but I mean, we got to step it up here. So you got quite the career. Did that was that something you were like, obviously you loved golf growing up. I know it was a big part of you and your brother's life. Like, did you ever think you would accomplish all this, or was it just staying consistent?
I didn't know. That's a really good question. I'll say this, that I always wanted to play at the highest level, and I was a decent player. But I think my goals were sort of scuttled when me, the older brother to Trevor, 9 years older, in fact, I think it was my junior year in college. I'd won a few times. I was a first team All America. I come home to South Africa and I get dusted by my 13-year-old brother. And that sort of scuttled plans because I'm like, well, if I want to be the best golfer in the world and I can't beat my household, this is going to be sort of hard, you know? So I think there was a lot of serendipity in this. And I just think through it all, the only thing that was consistent was our game of golf that was always there for me. And I fell into golf. A South African kid, I was a better cricket player and a better tennis player. Um, but I injured myself badly in rugby in the winter, and golf became accidental, and I fell in love. And here we are. I mean, it's looking back on the ride, it's been crazy. But I also want to say, like, to consistency, it's just being like, okay, I'm in this genre and I have different eras, which means, I'm not suddenly going, well, I'm giving up on the golf thing. I'm going to go and sell insurance. Have just stayed in golf, and doors have opened and doors have closed. But I guess to your point, I've been consistent. But golf has been consistent toward me too, and it's blessed us in the biggest way.
What out of all the things you've done here with, from the sports agent to the pro golf, like what was the one where did you have like a moment or maybe your first broadcast? Like what was it when you were like, wow, like I'm really doing it. Like I'm living the dream or I'm living, my purpose here.
I always had a dream, well, like I said, to play golf, but now fast forward and I become, because I'm a good teacher, which is taking a back seat to broadcasting now. But I always had a dream to teach someone playing in the Masters. And I got to do that. And standing on the range at Augusta National, Masters Week, with Tiger Woods just over there. And, it was back in the day when, there were a lot of the legends playing. That was a thrill. But I would think to your question, wow, this is really happening, um, was as a broadcaster calling my first major championship for CBS. Now I got into broadcasting. There was radio for a while, and then there was PGA Tour Live, and then by sheer serendipity again, I get onto the CBS golf crew, which is arguably the preeminent broadcast crew in all of broadcasting. And I sort of get some fringe jobs with them, and then they give me a few events, and then all of a sudden, I get sat down in the producer's office, and he says to me, he goes, "If I had my way," and this is 2 weeks before the PGA Championship, the 100th PGA Championship at Bellerive. He goes, "If I had my way, I'd put you on the crew for the PGA, but I don't have my way," basically. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was going to do feature groups coverage for the CBS feed there anyway. And the following day, my other boss, guy who does the hiring, calls me up and he said, "Listen, I've decided to take you off the feature groups coverage." And I was like, inside, I'm like, oh my goodness, no, what have I done? But then in the back of the head, I remember the conversation with my producer, Lance Sparrow. And so I'm like, maybe. I sound like Vern Lundquist now, forgive me. And my boss goes, "Yeah, we're gonna add you as a third a third walker on the team behind Peter Costas and Dottie Pepper for the PGA Championship." And I was like, wow. And that was cool, right? But then to get there and that Saturday afternoon, my first major championship that I was calling for CBS, the 100th at Bellerive, and I've got a group of Dustin Johnson and Charles Schwartzel. I mean, DJ was the #1 player in the world right then, I think. And I remember standing on the side of the first fairway, and they came to me, and Jim Nance sets it up for Pete's sake, and then there's me. And I remember in my head going, holy cow, this is for real now. And I fumbled out something probably incoherent and silly. And that was cool. And then I settled down, but I'll never forget, my pack then went down because we carry a monitor so we can do recorded shots. So I had nothing, right? And I didn't know what was going on. And it's the top of the show, and there's all this excitement. And all of St. Louis has showed up for this golf because, everyone's there, including Tiger Woods. And on the third hole, it's Vern Lundquist's hole. And I hadn't said to my producer that my video monitor was down. So Vern is economical with words. He doesn't need to speak a lot because he sounds like heaven. And he goes, "Schwartzel, Mark, And I don't know what, because this shot's on tape, I don't know what they're looking at. And I remember just having this sort of moment of like clarity where I heard the whack of the ball and I'm like, Vern, he's swinging it beautifully right now. And he hits the 7-iron to about 5 feet. And then we get to the hole and then Vern sets it up. And I'm like, well, after that beautiful shot, not paraphrase, it just needs to now capitalize or convert. And he knocks it in and Vern picks it up and he goes, well, he did. And he sort of built on my call. And that's when I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually happening. I went from Nance to Vern Lundquist on CBS on Saturday. Everybody's watching because Woods is in the field. And here's me. And I remember on the next hole, it was Gary McCord's hole. He was in the tower. And someone had a really long putt and over a big slope and stuff. And McCord did McCord stuff, it's all funnies and very sharp wits. And they come to me and I go, Gary, this putt is a birdie attempt in name only, kind of playing off the rhino thing, right? And McCord, I actually heard him giggle. And there, because he's like, yeah, if he gets this close, he's pulling rabbits out of hats kind of thing. And then I just remember this whole thing as I look back on it going, this is unreal. So very long-winded. I guess that was the moment.
That's an amazing moment, and I couldn't imagine. I mean, a couple of those, like you said, just being on the range at Augusta National. I mean, how I haven't made it there yet. How magical did it feel just walking on those grounds for the first time? Was that just like where you knew some magic just lived there, and it's just such an iconic place where you're like, wow, this is something special?
Well, I'd had the luxury, I guess, of going there before, to watch the tournament, and I'd had the luxury of going there alongside my brother when he played as an amateur. But then to walk onto the range, between all the people, because it's like, unlike other big events, the Masters is sort of intimate in a funny way. And to walk between the patrons and to have everyone sort of looking at you and knowing the gravitas of this place. And it's the first major of the year. And it's the one that arguably everybody wants to win. There's so much to it. And then Bob Jones is my hero, incidentally. It's magical. And every year I get to go back there, thankfully. I find, I'm going to borrow a phrase that I've from an Augusta National member who I give lessons to. And he says to me, he goes, every time I come here, I feel like I jumped the fence. And he's been a member there for 20 plus years. And so every time I get to go there, I feel like I jumped the fence because it's just that special.
Yeah, they don't allow just anybody in there too. So to be there 20 years, he's doing something right.
Yep, absolutely.
That's amazing. Well, I could talk with your broadcasting career all day because I love listening to you. I love your insights, but you packaged it up beautifully in your book here, and I'm super excited about it. Again, guys, it's called Lessons from the Best: Holistic Insights, Tips, and Tricks to Improve Your Golf. Forward by Jim Nance. See, nice little flex there, Mark. I got to step it up for my next book I'm working on right now. I got to see if Jim's available for that. But I loved that like we said, you had 700 plus episodes, 9 seasons. I mean, you've talked to pretty much everybody in the game, and you're still going at it and having amazing insights and learning so much from all kinds of players. So to boil it down, first off, how did you even where did you start? Where were you like, man, I gotta, was there certain episodes that have just always stuck out to you? Did you go off of just podcast downloads? Like, how do you even figure out where to start sharing? Because with that much data, it's got to be a little hard to choose.
Well, good question. Yeah, because there's 18 chapters. And we've had a number of guests. And my goal always with my podcast has been to shine a light on a bright mind, like you, for argument's sake, when you came on there. Because as a young man in South Africa, everything I learned about golf was from magazines and books I got my hands on. And back in the day, VHS cassette tapes. And so I never got to have a lesson with a Butch Harmon or one of these sorts of people. And I always hankered after that. And so when this show came about and it started to grow legs, I was like, my goal here is to give everyone in places that might never meet Michael Leonard the chance to meet and take a lesson with Michael Leonard. But I'm a stickler for it because remember, I'm a teacher down, deep down. And I've always believed that my message is only as good as what it's understood. And so for me, knowledge and stuff is one thing, but the wisdom to apply the stuff correctly or figure it out if it's applicable to self, that's very, very important. So I'm always striving striving to enhance understanding. So with all that said, I was like, okay, this book came about. The publisher came to me and we agreed upon the concept. But to distill it all out of all these shows, I was like, okay, how about this? We're giving lessons from the top of the head to the soles of the feet and the tips of the fingers, because I'm very holistic in my improvement approach to game improvement. So then I'm like, and we're going to basically pick the best chapters, but I with a view to understanding, I did a social media poll and I said to folks, if I was to do a book, which podcast would you like to was great to you? So we had some folks, some podcasts that came from listeners and viewers, and then we had some came from the download numbers, just in terms of popularity, and then with me just making sure that I could somehow make this whole thing holistic, we got to a place where I had to intervene a little bit and then go to one or two that I then inserted to make sure the entire story was told. But the reality of it is, Michael, there is likely more lessons from the best, or lessons from the best two, or whatever, coming down the pike, because there's just been so much stuff. And the goal was to basically say, okay, here is Nick Price, and we're going to talk about the iron game, because that's what he does, right? But when I listened back to the podcast, there was so much stuff in there. I'm like, we can't just do iron game with Nick. And when I talked to Jordan Spieth, and I was like, this is just going to be wedging. There's just so much in there. We can't just do that. And when you talk with, I don't know, David Ledbetter, when he starts hitting you with communication and stuff, I'm like, this is not just teaching either. So every podcast is kind of, every chapter, I should say, is sort of self-contained, and it's about one individual. And there's quotes that I've pulled out of the thing and then kind of woven them together with me elaborating on them. And the final chapter is sort of me building on an acronym of on the mark. So basically saying, well, you've heard all these legends in our game. Now here's some kind of marching orders to make sure that you go and apply this stuff and go and get the most out of yourself, because all the information in the world not properly applied amounts to nothing. So that's sort of the book. So I guess it's some fan involvement, some publisher involvement, some me involvement, and that's how she came about.
Yeah, congrats again. I'm working on number 2 right now, and for my next golf book, and I forgot how much work it is.
Hold on, yours is on my desk here, in between all of my stuff.
Oh,
No, for real. And
I love it.
Folks who don't have it, I'm looking. Yeah, I'm seeing my Sam Snead book. There's Nicholas. Yeah, there it is, right above the Motivation Game by Mike Gravlas. The To that book, folks, you should go and get that too, because we are using yours in my house a lot. Okay, seriously, and it's I love I heart simplicity. I feel like we live in an era where we're all trying to sound smarter than someone else. But I will tell you this from standing on PGA Tour ranges and talking with players prior to the final round of a major championship. And you ask them, what are you working on? They're not talking about dorsiflexion and ulnar deviation and stuff like that. Okay. They're not. And you talk with the coaches, and the coaches aren't telling you, well, we're trying to ensure that, his tilts are matching up with his whatever. It's not. It's about playing the game and keeping the game simple, because when the rubber meets the road, it's about a bat and a ball under pressure. And your book does a wonderful job of there's that common denominator throughout the whole thing. And so that's why it's easily digestible and very applicable.
Well, I appreciate that. When I look back, as I'm like, man, I haven't written a book in a couple years. I did the audio version earlier this year. That was a whole nother adventure to record it. And I was like going through it. I'm like, what was I thinking about 2 years ago? I had no followers. I'd been writing about golf, freelancing. Most of it was ghostwritten, so nobody knew who I was, but I just loved the game. And I was like, I feel like I'm onto something. And I kind of think that was my apprenticeship into learning so much. And I've always had this wildly optimistic, positive attitude, just from failing a lot when I quit my corporate world job. And I just brainwashed myself with enough motivational stuff and I got into motivational writing. And so I feel like that all kind of seeps into the book, but it's funny when now I'm looking back, I'm including different podcast interviews in my next book as well. And I'm like, man, there is, like you said, sometimes so much stuff that you cover in one episode. It's hard to kind of nail it down and have like one theme. But when I was reading your book, obviously I haven't listened to all 700 of your episodes, but when I was going through it, I realized how many, just great piece of wisdom you've had also though with your guests. So I went along and, had 5 or 6 lessons here to cover, and I wanted to get your take on it. I think the first one was the Nick Price section. For me, the theme was to keep dreaming. You have a quote in here where you said, "I want to challenge you to dream. Even if you aren't a kid anymore, you should still dream and let those dreams motivate you to action." And you go on to say, if you plant these seeds and they spur you to action, then I promise they'll germinate one day. And I thought that was so good because I feel like the older I've gotten, and I just feel like so many people are so complacent and they're just like, this is who I am. I'm an 85 shooter. This is my career. This is all I'm going to be, and it's like, it drives me crazy. Like it literally drives me crazy. Like every year, if I'm not moving up in some area, I'm like sick to my stomach about it. And it happened in 2021, right before I started this brand. Cause I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm so complacent and I hate it so much. And so when I read that, I was like, I wish every golfer dreamed bigger and had audacious goals. So can you talk about what you think about, like, or how you would reference players to set big goals and just like, you never know what can happen, right? I mean, I just feel like so many people aren't setting them at all. So if you could maybe expand on that chapter and what you learned from Nick, I thought that was amazing.
Well, here's the crazy thing. Nick Price, multiple major champion, former world's #1 player. The podcast downloads were desperate. They were dismal. And I remember being so disappointed. And his was one of the chapters I put in there because the thing is just, it's like a gold mine in there in that chapter and everything in that podcast. And I listened back to the shows and they were so sort of, I was so green at what I was doing there that having to listen back to the thing was nauseating for me. But anyhow, that's an aside.
That happens to everybody though, right? That's a good thing.
Terrible. But I remember listening to Nick because he's been like a mentor to me. And I remember listening to him describing that he was a young man in Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, in South Africa. And we didn't have live golf on TV back then. And they used to get like 8mm reels or whatever it was that would get broadcast because they were sponsored by the cigarette companies over there. And all that they got to watch basically was the Open Championship. And he was a young man, and they had some great golfers back then. I mean, Mark McNulty, Simon Hobday, Dennis Watson, Nick Price. They had some unreal golfers. And he was like, I want to win the Open one day after just watching it on TV. And I remember when he said that to me, I'm like, you know what? Every single one of these guys, even the guy on the wall behind you, Tiger Woods, the stories go that he had the picture of Jack Nicklaus on the wall behind him with the 18 majors. We all have a dream. Tiger Woods didn't start on the top of the pile. Nick Price, for the longest time, was talented, but inconsistent. And he'll tell you that. But he had a dream and he kept to it. And there's I think the quote I built the chapter off, along the dreaming thing was when he got to the European Tour. The European Tour is very convivial and the players travel together and back in the day then it was legends and Seve Ballesteros was always out there. And my days teaching over there, Seve was always around the chipping and putting green. And he never practiced that much. He'd always come talk to people and then, look at your clubs and stuff and then hit a few shots. And Nick talks there and there's a quote that I built off where Nick's like, and I always used to, because I could hit the ball, but my short game wasn't that good. I always used to go and find Seve. And I'm paraphrasing and I go and just listen to Seve. And then it would always turn into some sort of chipping contest. And he goes, and I would lose every single time. And he goes, but that was the best $25 I think I ever invested ever, because the time spent around Seve Ballesteros around a chipping green, because I'm dreaming to win, realizing this is what I've got to do. So why not just go and ask the best? He goes, that sort of sent him on the way. And the funny thing is, there at Lytham, I think it was, he was in the final group because he had spilled the Open Championship a couple of times before he finally won his at Turnberry. But in the final group, he was alongside Seve. and Sevi pipped him at the end, hitting some unbelievable short game shots and getting up and down from everywhere. And but Nick speaks of him with such reverence. And then I'm listening to this guy who's a Hall of Famer and a major champion and talking about how great this game is and Sevi and my dream and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, this guy's just like us. And I hope that with that chapter, I sort of passed on that message because he was so cool, because he quickly then flipped from that to the place now where he is an elder statesman and he's helping young golfers like young South Africans and stuff, and basically bringing them the wisdom of all of his years. So he was a dreamer. He achieved it. Now he's passing it all on, and he's a great man. And when he agreed to allow me to use him in the book, I was like, this is good because I'm definitely going to. I think I might have snuck it in there anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, hopefully everybody can just take, wherever you're at. I don't care if you're 30, 50, 60, we got all kinds of different ages listening. Set some dreams. You never know what can happen. And I get so many cool stories of people that are, even later in life, 50, 60, 70. I literally have had a guy yesterday. I almost cried reading email. It was so cool. He had a really bad health condition and somehow had to take 8 months off, but came back and had one of the best rounds of his life. And I'm like, man, that is just so cool. And he just said, I just, kept with it, stayed consistent. And it just really inspired me. So when I read that, I was like, let's just keep going. No matter what age, let's think big.
Well, if you want to think big and you want dreams, I mean, the fact that you and I are talking to each other is miraculous in a way, because folks who haven't listened to Michael's show on mine, I found him because my wife, Tracy, found Michael on Instagram. And as wives do, she said to me, she goes, you got to get this guy on your podcast. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And it turns out where like you brought so much wisdom, and like I said, the book lives on my desk here and we're using it because it's simple advice because, that we can pass on to my daughter who's playing the game at a high level now.
Yeah, you just never know what can happen sometimes. I never imagined I'd be on your show, and that was a nice. I hadn't felt those first two jitters since I tried to go to Q school, Mark. So thanks for that. Hey, just a reminder that Mark's new book is out and for sale. I've included the links down below. Highly recommend that you purchase it. It's 18 chapters and will have a huge impact on helping your mental game and finally learning tips and tricks from the best golfers in the world so you can play better and have a lot more fun. So the second one that I liked, and I have to learn more about it, is from Dr. Bob Rotella. Obviously inspired my career a ton. He's the, kind of go to sports psychology, and one of the probably the first book I ever read about this stuff when I had no idea in high school and college. I was like, what is this mental game stuff? And I loved this quote that he said. He said, I can tell you this, you don't have a chance if you're negative, and positive thinking doesn't guarantee that you're going to be successful, but it guarantees that you're going to find out if you have the ability to play at the level you want to play. And when you're negative, you never get to find out. And so I stress that with anyone that wants to listen to this podcast or YouTube or the book, just like, you got to set yourself up to win. So how would you, what are some things you would recommend for the everyday golfer on how to develop that positive mindset? Because chances are a lot of people still have that fixed mindset. They maybe aren't as optimistic as me and you sometimes with, certain things. And we, like I said, kind of get in those ruts sometimes. How do you cultivate that optimistic, positive attitude?
I think it's a daily endeavor. I feel like it's the kind of thing where you get into the habit, which is not easy, where when you wake up and you put your feet on the ground next to the bed, that you go, man, I get to live another day. I saw the coolest tweet the other day from, one or other wise man from India. And he said, something to the effect of, every night, and I might get the number wrong, so forgive me, 2.5 million people around the world die. He goes, so every morning you should wake up and go, wow, aren't I glad I wasn't one of the 2.5 million people. So with that, I feel like, cultivating that mindset is a daily endeavor, and you've got to choose that. I'll never forget my dad as a youngster saying to us, he goes, look, your talent's going to put you in front of kings and statesmen and stuff, but you got to choose to want to deploy yourself. He always used to say, you got to be employed, you have to deploy yourself. And that's such a decision to go, okay, I'm going to try and put myself in the position to be successful. Because it's easy to slump back, and negative attitudes and stuff are easy. Misery loves company. And if you, like Gary Player, I've been fortunate to know him. He's nauseatingly positive. He truly is. I mean,
So it's everything we see is exactly what it really is.
absolutely exactly who he is. And I'll never forget him saying to both Trevor and me, he goes, so you get to a golf course and the conditions are bad. He goes, 50% of the players are complaining about that. So that means you only have 49% of the players to beat. So make sure you're not in that crowd over there. And so Gary cultivated it. And so as a result, I think I just took it sort of seriously. But the challenge is that golf and life will get you down. And there will be, hiccups and speed bumps and sometimes things that are large we have to circumvent. But you can do it if you set your mind to it. To the mind, I read this weird thing. I remember back there, it's one or other, part at the back lower portion of the brain. I wish I could remember the name. But this is essentially because we get so much stimuli all day long that this is like a filter for your brain, right? And the thing goes, it sort of goes like this. This is how it works. And I'll get back to the Gary Player thing and the positivity. Let's say you are now looking to buy a car and you love this red Beetle, this red VW bug, and you hadn't seen one on the roads at all. Now you enter the red VW bug, and lo and behold, you drive home and you see one on the road. Then you see one the next day, and you start to see it because now you've now reprogrammed this filter a bit, so it's letting that information into your brain.
The reticular activating system.
That's what it is. You see, you're the expert. I knew you're going to help me out here. Thank you. And so it's that thing. So you can, honestly, you can now back me up. You can program yourself. Like Gary Player would say to me, he goes, I never got a bad bounce. Now, I've seen him get bad bounces, but he just doesn't acknowledge them. Or he goes, when I hit the ball in the trees, it kicks out. And if you choose to, when you hit the ball in the tree, look for the times it kicks out and not look for the times that it bounces into a worse lie, you're going to realize, man, I get a lot of good bounces out of the trees. It's not. It's just that your mind is doing that sort of stuff. And so you're putting yourself in a place where you're on the front foot. Because the reality is, and I might get a bit biblical here, that, wherever you go, there's always giants in whatever land you're trying to venture into or whatever challenge you're trying to meet. My mom says to me, new level, new devil. She says it all the time. So wherever you ascend to, they're not minions and people in there. They're all giants at the next level. So if you want to go and lift your game or lift your performance, whatever, you better get a giant sort of mindset and go, all right, it's not going to be easy up there, but I can do this. But if you go in there and you go, oh goodness, have you seen the size of them? And have you seen how good they are? I've got no chance. You know what? Like Rotella said, you won't have any chance then if you adopt that mindset. So it truly is. It's a thing. It's biological, and it takes a little training. It's got to become a habit, but when it does, you will find that you will tend toward the positive. And I've been both, and I would advocate positivity over negativity highly.
And I mean, you're inside the ropes too. Like, can you tell when someone is, maybe going down a down, having a couple of tough holes? Like, can you really see when they're, trying to do it, or is that when a caddy's job is to, be that sports psych out there and to kind of bring them back up? Like, I know obviously some guys have a lot of emotion, some guys show no emotion. Like, what is that like even inside the ropes? Can you kind of see when someone's getting down a slippery slope?
You can a bit. Certain guys telegraph it more than others. And they're lucky to have a wingman by their side because remember the caddy, and I've interviewed a number of caddies on my show. These folks, their livelihood depends on their guy going well. So they're the most motivational, uplifting human beings you've ever come across. Okay. Because their paycheck is dependent on it. So that's helpful, but we don't have that luxury if we're out there playing by ourselves. And then also the professional, I think this is where experience comes in. Like Jack Nicklaus once mentioned, he goes, I really only wanted to start finding my game on Saturday morning, even Saturday afternoon. He wasn't concerned with Thursday, Friday. He was not worried about making cuts. He wanted to make sure he was playing into form for a Sunday run. And so I'm saying that to say, if he made a few bogeys Thursday morning, he wasn't that bothered, right? So he could make a mistake or two because they have the luxury of time over 72 holes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, our game over 18 holes, us regular golfers, we have less time, but the reality is that even though it's just an 18-hole thing for your club championship or for the money or the pride or whatever, you're also playing golf, I don't know, 50, 60 days a year or whatever it is. And so if you average that all out, it's a lot of time and you're going to make mistakes. But again, just choose to look upon things with a mindset of, it's like, this is an opportunity to go and excel if I'm in trouble.
Yeah, I like that attitude too. Just being like, hey, if I'm in a tough spot, like it's just an opportunity to, show off that skill or to have that resilience. And sometimes when you hit a bad one and you have a good bounce back, that's actually when you get some momentum sometimes, and you kind of focus when you have to hit it under the tree or over the tree. It's kind of funny how that works sometimes.
Yeah, the guy, Tiger Woods, is on the wall behind you. He's highlight reel. Most of those shots are not coming from in the middle of the fairway.
Never.
They're not. And a lot of them are putts from 25, 30, 40 feet up and over hills, down through valleys and stuff, where he's had his back against the wall, but by sheer will and determination and talent and all the stuff blended together, timeliness, he's pulled the shot off. And now it's like a movie reel, the stuff he's done.
Yeah, his highlight reel is like 30 minutes on YouTube, and it's probably still not even enough. Have you had any up close and personal Tiger shots where you're like, how did that just happen?
I have, well, various, but the one that stands out was in Mexico, in the World Golf Championships event in Chapultepec. And it was feature groups coverage with PGA Tour Live, and I had him. And the one thing that stood out to me was, this is Tiger Woods in Mexico, first time he'd played down there, and he was paired alongside Abraham Ancer. And the Mexican fans were making more noise for Abe than what they were for Tiger. Anyhow, it's late Friday afternoon. We're the feature group. We're coming up there. They're finishing on the ninth hole. And the ninth hole travels uphill. It's basically for Tiger like a 3-iron and a 8 or 9-iron. Simple. Gentle dogleg to the right uphill, big bunker down the right, and this massive tree that had no leaves in it beyond the bunker. You smiling, you know the shot. And he fans the 3-iron out in the bunker, I think it was. And we get down there, and I'm there before him, and I look up and I just see this massive tree 40 yards in front, and it's blocking the green. Now, you could hit it through the tree because then there's no leaves, but it's just big. So they come to me, and I'm like, oof, lie is okay. There's a bit of a lip. He's going to have to really bend this thing, or otherwise, because he was close to the cut-ish, I'm like, just out there 20, 30 yards short left of the green. It's the front right hole location. It's a fairly easy up and down for the par. So he gets in there, and I see him have a look, and he goes to the bottom of the bag, and the wedge comes out. And I'm like, well, he's gone to the wedge. This looks like a layup play. And then he steps out the bunker and goes back to the bag and pulls out what looks like 7-iron or something. And I see him start to make these practice swings where it's like he's trying to hit now a 40-yard slice shot out of the fairway bunker. And I remember the guys in the booth were talking about something else. And I get on my talk back to my producer. I'm like, are you guys watching this right now? Because I don't know what you're watching. Right? He goes, yeah, the camera's on him. I'm like, hold the shot, because he's going to now try and go for the thing and have them get it to me. So our host, John Swantek, who's like one of the best, he comes down to me and he goes, change your plans, Mark. I'm like, a little bit. And so they zoom in, and the producer says to me, he goes, we're showing the practice swings. And if we're on a straight line shot through the trees, he's aiming like 45 degrees this way, and he's swinging left of where he's aiming. And I'm like, he is trying to slice this thing onto the green. And so he hits it, and I remember the strike was majestic. You could hear the sound of it. And I remember going, it's come out clean, or that's a great strike. And then it's airborne, and I see this thing just start turning right. It's like it switched on a blinker and is now fading, slicing. And I'm like, it's cutting now. And Karen Stupples was the analyst, who is beautifully English. And this thing hits the left side of the green and spins like a top down the hill to about 15 feet. And I'm like, shot of the day is what I shout in my microphone, probably overmodulated because I was so excited. And Karen goes, holy moly. I'll never forget the call. And he hit it there to like 15 feet on the right side of the flag. He carved the thing 45 yards with an 8-iron from the fairway bunker. It was incredible.
I was smiling because I definitely remember that shot, but I'm not kidding you. I was writing about that this morning as an
Oh,
example in
really?
my next book about the importance of taking rehearsal swings that mimic the shot you want to hit. Because
Uh,
most of us, take those lazy swings that they're not what we're trying to do. But I'm like, Tiger is the best example. You know exactly the shot he's going to hit
mhm.
before he does it. And I was like, what about that fairway bunker shot? So it was just funny because I was just reliving it this morning, 4 a.m., writing away in the dark here and thinking about that shot. So for you to bring that up and the fact that you were there and got to see it, I got the chills right now because that was an absolutely insane shot. I can't even describe how hard that is to carve a fairway bunker shot like that. And then I'm a little disappointed in him though because he didn't make that putt. But I decided to get rid of that part from the book because it was worthy of it. But I mean
You know,
I'm so glad you got to call that. I did not realize that was you on the call. That's amazing.
but to put a bow on it, no, for NBC, Noda Begay was with him. All right. So he hits the shot, and he and Noda are walking up the fairway, sort of hamming it up a little bit. And I just sort of drop back and I have a look at Tiger. And I'm like, are you serious? And the Tiger smile and he sort of just winks at me. He goes, yeah, I'm the man. I'm like, you are the man. It was wild. But again, it just shows it proves to people that anything's possible. And you need to set yourself up for success. Because if you get in there, and to your point, if you're just making your regular old practice swing, it's like going on stage and not having a dress rehearsal. You're liable to fail. And Tiger is a master at telegraphing, at preparing himself without hitting a shot for the shot that's upcoming.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be fun for you as a broadcaster. Be like, oh, we know he's hitting the high fade here. We know he's hitting the stinger. Like you can kind of get a little call there because he's doing such a good job giving his mind. Hey, here's what we're. Well, he probably already has that picture in his mind. Now he's giving the body the instructions. Like, hey, let's do it. I'm glad you got to see that up close and personal. Like I said, his highlight reel is endless. Couple other chapters that just really stuck out to me. Honestly, I have too many notes probably for as much time as we have here, but I really liked what you said, in the Bryson section. Bryson obviously has a lot of love and some critics here and there. I'm a huge Bryson fan. I absolutely love his work ethic. I love what he's done for the game. And you talked about just the importance of hard work and like how hard it is. So I had a quote here. It said, even the very best players with the best physical abilities practice a lot. So if you want to make an improvement, why would you think you'd get away with any less? Because I have a lot of people that are like, hey, I want to break 80. Hey, I want to become a scratch golfer. I want to get into tournaments. And it's like, well, how much do you practice? Well,
Mhm.
not that much. Or, I just like to play all the time. And I'm like, okay. And even in your book, you mentioned that Kyle Berkshire was hitting 600 drivers a day at full speed, which I couldn't even imagine hitting 600 lob wedges, let alone drivers. Like my back hurts thinking of that. So as a coach, like what do players need to be doing in terms of like work ethic or like how would you go into a practice session and be like, hey, here's what I need to do to get better? Like, how should they have the mindset and maybe also kind of some practice habits to get that Bryson type of work ethic?
I want to take a step back from that observation and first off say, because golf tends to be so emotional, I feel like sometimes we make emotional decisions about our game. And so the first thing I would say is before you go and practice, really know what you're supposed to be working on. Because too often times when golfers do get time to go and practice, they go and hit the clubs that they're good with because they're sort of showing off on the range a little bit. So identify areas required for improvement and remove emotionality from it. So as far as possible, try and get some data. And I'm not going to knock you over the head with data, but I will say this in all the golfs I've spent time around with over all the years, too often times we react to a few things. They're like, well, I can't putt. No, they're not like, well, you took 29 putts today. But they're remembering the one that they missed that meant something. So that's the first thing. So try and get Arcos or something like that and get some data on yourself and then start to make a real business decision about what you're going to work on. And then I would say too, if you really want to improve, understand what's required to make the relevant change. Because the next thing, and this is where podcasts like yours or podcasts like mine, they're helpful. But again, you got to be like not emotional about this and start to say, well, I'm just want to hit, I need more speed, for argument's sakes. So you got to be appropriate in what you work on. And then You don't have to hit 600 balls like Kyle Berkshire, but what you got to do is the 50 that you hit or the 25 that you hit, that these things have your full focus, and you're not rapid firing balls away there. Each shot should have a plan. There should be some rehearsal swings. I'll say this from watching guys on the tour. I see more training aids on the PGA Tour than I see at the local clubs wherever I go. I see more alignment rods used on the PGA Tour than I see on the local golf clubs I get to go to. I see more practice swings in between practice shots on the tour and rehearsals than I see on the local clubs. I see more PGA Tour players stretching and warming up appropriately before they hit shots than I ever see at the local clubs. So it's like these folks, they're uber talented, yet they're doing everything right. And it's not necessarily the quantity, it's the quality of what you do. And that's not just like, well, okay, Mark, I'm going to hit 20 shots and make practice swings. It's like hit 20 shots, but understand what you're working on. And even if you might hit the ball badly, if you've been true to what you've been working on, well, that was a good day. Now, I will always hold my own feet to the fire and say, if as an instructor, I've given you the right information, you should hit the ball better. But it's going to take some getting used to under pressure. But like if you're making some change in the motor patterns or whatever, it's going to feel awkward and uncomfortable. And you might not flush them all of the time, but remain true to the thing. So I would say commitment, wholehearted commitment, and commit to quality. So if you have limited time, make it count. If you have a lot of time, make sure you also make it count. And so whereas someone in great shape like Kyle Berkshire is hitting all these shots, sorry, you're not Kyle Berkshire. So give yourself some time to rest in between shots too, because fatigue is the enemy, or what's the quote? Fatigue makes mortals of us all. And so I just want to say, when you start to get tired, you might not feel it, but when you're learning something new, it's a new area that you're developing. You might not be able to hit that many. So give yourself breaks, change pace, go like, well, I'll go and hit a few putts for a while, and then come back and hit a few more shots. So that's sort of my take on things. Because look, the reality is you're not going to fall to the top of the ladder. You're going to have to climb the ladder to get to the top. It's the same with golf. You're not going to accidentally get better. And when you get to a certain level, your talent will take you thus far. The discipline blended with the talent takes you further. And then the attitude and the discipline take you to the top of the ladder, in my opinion. So you're going to get to a place where talent's going to you're going to hit your barrier. And that's where discipline comes in. And the discipline is, how do you go about your craft? Are you professional about it, or are you like, well, laissez-faire and hopefully get better?
Love it. Focus practice, avoid some of those mistakes. Like you said, I think that's so key. And it kind of leads to the last point that I wanted to talk about from your book was the Max Homa section. You kind of talked about him not panicking and going through a slump a little bit. I feel like a lot of guys maybe do that. And like we talked about, earlier, sometimes like it could just be an emotional decision, or you just said, hey, I'm putting bad, but statistically you putted really good. It's like trying to obviously take the emotion out of it. But I really liked, what you talked about with stress and staying like optimistic and not letting that emotion and, lead to irrational decisions. So what would you say to a golfer that is feeling a little plateaued? Maybe they're stuck in the mid 80s or stuck in the mid 70s, or just had a horrible season and don't really know what to go. Like, is there any, is it taking time off? Is it working with a different coach? How does honestly assessing your game kind of play into all that?
That is a really good question. And for different people, as you know, that answer may vary. But I will tell you this. I think the happiest golfers in the world are the guys and girls that shoot 90, 95. The unhappiest golfers in the world are the folks that are shooting par and better. Okay. Because when you are new in the game, and I want people to take yourself back there, when I've given lessons to a beginner, when they get a ball in the air, it doesn't even have to be straight. It's the happiest event of their day. And so as an event, they look, as a result, the mindset is they look forward to this stuff and they really embrace the good. Now I'm getting to the Max Homa out of all of this. Then as we progress, where the beginning golfer or the novice golfer, they're huge increments of improvement. You can go from like 105 to 100 and from 100 to 95. And, then you might hit the 90 barrier, but you'll still take chunks off this. And then when you get close to par, those infinitesimal how small you are. I mean, strokes gained has you looking for a tenth of a stroke here and a tenth of a stroke there. So, in other words, the good golfer is more inclined to look for mistakes, where the not so good golfer is more inclined to look for the good stuff. So, if you're in a slump, and this is what Max Homer basically said, he talked about how, his swing in his mind had become like a pretzel, and he had to unravel the whole thing and re-ravel it. So, it spoke to him going, well, I had to kind of unravel things. So, it talked, he sort of was saying, I organized my mind a bit, I made some smart decisions. And then things started going in the right direction. Now, in terms of that looking for the good stuff, I think future success kind of leaves clues a little bit. And he talks about prior to the win at Quail Hollow, he was paired alongside Rory McIlroy on Saturday. And he goes, oh, this is Rory. I mean, this is Rory McIlroy, okay? If anyone's going to make you feel less than, it's Rory because of the way he plays and the way he hits it. He goes, but I played well alongside him once I got over the nerves. And I sort of realized I can hang with this guy. He hadn't won the tournament, but he took that moment alongside Rory where he had a few quality shots and he shot a decent score. And he's like, okay, well, I'm still in my slump, but my game's looking better. And he took that attitude. He goes, okay, I can hang. This was Saturday at Quail in the Wells Fargo alongside McIlroy. And that sort of parlayed him, helped him over the finish line Sunday. And the way he described that to me it was so real. I was like, that is so cool. Because most of us, like in a place like that, we'd be so aware and so self-aware and feel so conspicuous. And there are crowds everywhere. And it's so easy to be the guys like, oh goodness, I'm gonna hit the 3-iron in the neck into some gallery member in 15 seconds. But he got over the nerves, hit some good shots. And then he started to find like, okay, the changes I've made, my re-raveling of my pretzel, okay, I'm seeing a little something. So I'm saying to folks, look for those little somethings and start to build your house on those. Because every house was built with one brick at a time. The mighty oak tree. I give out acorns to people because as a kid, my first provincial team I ever made as a golfer our logo was an acorn. And he gave me a card with an acorn on the front of it that said, from tiny acorns, mighty oak trees grow. So look for those little acorns around the place and realize the potential they have within them. So instead of going, oh, I'm still in a slump, I suck today, try and, eke out those little bits of good because those things are going to help you to gain a little traction and sort of get your train going in the right direction more consistently.
And that should be the book trailer right there, Mark. That was absolutely perfect. That's a very, very good answer that I feel like so many people can hopefully resonate with because this game can really get you down some days. And like you said, it's all about finding the good, cultivating that positive mindset that we talked about. And again, I couldn't recommend everyone buying that book enough.
I need to say this. Sorry, I had to hold my finger up like a teacher. Folks, golf isn't easy. It isn't. It's simple. And golf, you're going to have a ton of bad, but you're also going to have some good. And I will tell you this, of all the great rounds I've seen, like Tiger, that 8-iron I was talking about, he had a pretty crappy shot to get to where he was. Now, he could have belabored the 3-iron off the tee or whatever it was, but he didn't. And I saw something, I love tennis as well. I saw a thing on social where they basically interviewed all the leading players right now, Sinner and all of them, Djokovic and all of these guys. And they said the common denominator between all of them was they put the previous point behind them. And I think, and I remember taking this and putting it as a story on my Instagram going, there's a golf tip in this too. Because that shot behind you is behind you. Whether you hit it good or bad or whatever, you've hit it and you are here right now. So let's get busy over here. Because if you live over there, then you're scuttling this one a little bit too.
Could not agree more. And it's hard to do. It's easy to think about, but it is hard to do. And that's a skill that if you can develop, makes you dangerous on the golf course.
or guys like you around. Yeah, you can help them. Yeah, here's the thing. I would say, as a golf coach, golf instructor, swing guy, I would say fixing your golf swing is the intellectually lazy way of improving your game. It's the easiest stuff. It's the easiest way. You can go and grind on that all day long. Fixing your mind, fixing your emotions and stuff. There's the real challenge. To that Bryson thing, I think I might have put it in the book. At the PGA at Southern Hills, he was in the practice round. I'd interviewed him on the podcast before. I come out there. He's been off for a while because he had a wrist injury. And I'm like, hey, Bryson, how you doing? And, Bryson's now friends of everybody. And he's telling me everything he's doing and stuff. And I'm watching him hit. And I'm like, man, you're hitting it well. How much have you played? He goes, I hadn't touched the club until last Friday. And I'm like, this is as good as I've seen you hit it. And he goes, you know what I did? I'm like, I'm sure you're going to tell me. And he said, he goes, I would go in my living room and sit on my easy chair, my recliner. And he goes, I would just visualize my golf swing for minutes on end. Close my eyes, visualize how I wanted my swing to be. That was my practice.
Wow. I mean, for Mr. Technical and the scientist, as they call him, I would have never thought that that's what he would have went to.
I would just visualize my swing. Because think about it, every event in your body happens because of what your brain signals.
Yep.
So if you get a clear signal up there, you're sending clear signals to your body. Promise you.
I love it, man. That's I would have never guessed that from Bryson, I guess. I don't know if I would have thought of all people. I figured he would be the more on the super technical versus the, mental side. But I mean, that also goes to show that he is a tinkerer and will do whatever it takes and try anything.
Well, the title of the chapter, I think, was No Stone Left Unturned.
I think that sounds right.
And the quote, because every chapter has a quote that I pulled that was kind of like the feature. And his quote was something to the effect of Occam's razor.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know what Occam's razor is. It's basically a law that says the best way to solve a problem is to find the simplest way, the way that involves the least invasive approach. And Bryson goes, I did bowls for hours on end. He goes, not just to like figure out a way. I was trying to figure out the most efficient way to get the ball hit consistently. That's why he holds the club like he does, and that's what he does. He's got to that by experimentation to find the simplest way for him to get the club face square through the ball. So, in amongst all the little big words he uses, he's just trying to boil it down to simplest, and that's what he's doing all the time.
Yeah, he's clearly found some success with what he's doing, and it's always entertaining to watch his approach and his YouTube and everything. He's definitely let the world in and kind of turned over a new page for his book as well, and obviously got a lot of love on the YouTube side. So, you got time for a couple of just rapid fire questions?
Shoot, yeah, let's do it.
All right. You've done everything in the golf world like we talked about, so I'm curious on this one. Favorite tournament you like to watch or broadcast?
Love to watch the Masters for obvious reasons. I think the favorite tournament I like to broadcast is sort of between Pebble Beach, the AT&T, and the Scottish Open. I love Links Golf. I haven't broadcast the Open, so somewhere between the Scottish Open, Pebble Beach, and then the Players Championship, because it's I think the show that they put on down there for that event is just very cool.
That course is amazing. That looks so good. And those last 4 holes just seem like you got to really earn that victory.
Yeah, you do. You do.
What about since you obviously kind of just were there with Augusta, how did you celebrate your brother winning the Masters? Where were you at? What were you guys doing? Anything fun come from that?
I was there. I was teaching him at the time. I remember he came off the green and we hugged. And I think I cried a lot. And then I'll never forget the prize giving on the putting green. The sun was sort of setting over the pine trees in the distance, and I remember hearing a train in the distance. So the sound of a train's horn, or whatever you call it, will forever be linked to the Masters for me. But then the membership have a dinner for the champion that evening, and we were invited, and that was incredible. And then I got to try on the green jacket after that, which was cool too. So I was right there.
That's an amazing memory. Wow. What about your dream foursome, dead or alive? Who would you like to tee it up with?
Bob Jones, my dad, just so you can see these people. And now probably my daughter Isabel. So it would be Bob Jones, my dad, Izzy, and me.
I love it. How about the favorite course for you to play? Where's one that you go there and you get good vibes from it?
The reality is that of all the places I've been to, I haven't really played very many of them.
Mm.
I have played Augusta National. People wondering, it's it's incredible. It's hard. It's very very
It
difficult.
looks hard.
It's so difficult. Um, but here in the summer of 24, I played the old course with my daughter Izzy, and it was magical. And so I would have to say the old course at St Andrews.
Love it. Before getting into the last one, or I guess final rapid fire question here, driving or putting, which one should everyday golfers work on more? That was the
uh,
response I was hoping I'd get, actually.
Trying to catch me out with this. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna say low hanging fruit. Putt well.
Hmm.
Um, I know this is rapid fire, but I'm going to say this: if you drive the ball well, you'll make fewer big numbers. If you putt the ball well, you'll make more small numbers. Right. So if you hit the driver in play, you'll eliminate sixes and sevens and stuff like that typically. But if you're good at shot number three, you're going to make a whole lot of threes and fours. So I'm going to say this: no matter where you are in the game, I would always gravitate to putting first. It's the lowest hanging fruit.
All right. Well, I love it. Before getting into the last question, where is the best place for people to learn about your awesome book and connect with you and follow your work?
The website's markimmelman.com. Social media, it's Mark underscore Immelman. The book you can get, it's at back9press.com/Immelman. It's BACK, the number nine, press, PRESS.com, and my last name, Immelman. Hello. Immelman, IMMELMAN.
Are we going to get an audio book? Because you got, the kind of the voice of God over there, Mark. Because I don't know if you're, no, I don't know. Never say never.
Yeah, well, apparently. I need you as my hype guy. So
I
no.
would absolutely be in the studio with you getting you ready because I honestly, when I started doing the audio version of my book, it just opened up a whole new level. I've dragged my feet for almost 2 years on it, and I'm like, wow, I couldn't believe how many people like the audio side, and obviously everybody knows your voice, so something to think about, just something to think about.
I've become my own worst enemy though. Because now you see, now I'm thinking about what I have to say, and then you start
Oh,
miss.
it's challenging. I'm not going to say it's not. When you're reading your work and you're like, why did I structure the sentence that way? That could have been better,
Well, I've
And
done I've done multiple voiceovers, right? And then you feel like you're nailing one, and you're reading through there, and you're getting to the last sentence, and then you're like, I haven't screwed this up yet, and then you screw it up. It's it's the worst. It just highlights to me guys like Nance and company who
yeah,
just go through these voiceovers, and it sounds like it just rolls off the tongue. It's
yeah. He
no.
makes it seem. I mean, you do as well, but I mean, Jim is like, you can listen to that all day. I'm so jealous you get to.
I couldn't
So
pronounce my last name just a few seconds ago. Couldn't.
it happens. It happens, man. But you've done so much. So I guess for the last question, I just want to know what's next for you. I mean, I know we're going to have a volume of these books eventually. Anything else you want to accomplish in the golf world that hasn't happened quite yet?
Yeah, I want to shoot my edge, God willing, one day. That's way down the track, hopefully. Um, no, but in terms of my cup is full. Um, I would love to see my eldest daughter really fulfill her talent. That being said, I'm not sure I want to because I know what competitive golf at the highest level is like, behind the scenes. Um, but that's it. I love podcasting. I love writing. I love teaching a little bit. I maybe should play a little bit more. So, but no,
You're kind of
I'm
busy, so I mean, we won't hold it against you.
I'm good. I just want to be a good dad and a good husband.
Well, there's no doubt you're doing all that, and we'll put you in the Golf Hall of Fame. And I am very grateful for being on your show, for you being on mine now, and just learning so much. I definitely will listen to this episode several times myself again. And I know you're doing lessons, so I might have to make a trip out there.
Yeah, but before you do that, take two. We got to get you on again. I'm watching all the stuff that you're doing, and it seems to me like in a subject like the mental game, which there's sort of parameters to it, especially as you color the thing. It just seems like there's something different coming at you all the time. So I'm gonna have to get you back on my show.
I appreciate it, Mark.
You're welcome. Good to be with you.